Well, hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us this evening, and glad you could make it here. And we're going to have a good time this evening chatting about whatever's on your mind regarding off-grid power systems. You know, what we've been talking about in Blackout Proof with setting up a backup power system or an off-grid power system, or it doesn't even have to be solar. There are plenty of folks that are doing backup systems that are just batteries and an inverter to carry them through short-term events, or maybe they charge the batteries up with the generator and they'll do solar later. So it could be just a generator, or it could be generator, batteries, and inverter, or it could be the whole works and include solar in the mix. All sorts of different options, and happy to go there with you guys today in whatever way is helpful. And so first off, though, just want to make sure that everything's coming through clear. So if you would post in the chat there, if you can hear me, if it's all good, everything's coming through well, and also where are you listening from? And that's always interesting, see where folks are coming from. So if you would, right there in the chat box, just punch it in there. And excellent. Glad you could. Thanks for letting me know that you could hear us. Um, and yeah, just let us know where you're joining from, and want to hop into some questions that have come in. We have some questions that have come in via email, but as always, I'm going to prioritize those of you that are here live. So if you have something, if you have a question or something that you're wanting to listen to, discuss or whatever, plug it into the chat box, and happy to chat about it and share with you if I know about it. And if I don't, then I'll let you know. I don't know. Yes, this is great. Avon Park, Florida. Paul from Puyallup, North Idaho. Welcome, Bill. Tennessee, North Carolina. That's great. Thanks, everyone, for sharing. That's always interesting. Okay, so while and we've already got a question. Excellent. And I do want to touch on something at some point in time here where we are talking about a question that has been a popular question over the years, and maybe on your mind to some extent, and it seems to come up regularly. So I want to just start off with talking about this for just a minute, and that is EMP, electromagnetic pulse. We talked about EMPs in video 1 of this Blackout Proof series, and if you haven't gotten a chance to check out video 1 of Blackout Proof, please hop over to our playlist on YouTube and check that out, because there's some really good info in there that I think you'll find helpful to see the current state of the power grid. But the question that comes in sometimes is, well, what about, with an EMP, wouldn't your solar system be at risk? Or what would you do regarding protecting your solar system from an EMP and that sort of thing? So I wanted to take just a moment to touch on this and share with you my thoughts. Part of it is there's a lot of unknowns with EMPs, but let me just show. This is actually from a presentation that I did, and I'll give you the link for the whole presentation. But I did a whole webinar on this topic actually several years ago. And so I don't have time to go through the whole thing, but this is a well-recognized thing. Lloyd's of London, they say, the big insurance company, they say that it could have a duration of, let's see here, forget how many, it could affect between 20 to 40 million people with durations of 16 days to 1 to 2 years is a naturally occurring EMP, you might say, in the form of a solar storm. And that's just one form of it. But then, of course, there's the man-made kind, which is usually a lot worse. Nuclear weapon detonated up in the above the atmosphere. This was Starfish Prime back in the 50s, which really is the last big um, wide scale test that I'm aware of where it affected civilian infrastructure. And so um, this is where I'm coming from, is that we don't have a lot of real world data about EMPs. So here's my theory. And one thing is really good grounding. And I'm just going to flip through some of these slides here. Like I said, I don't have time to go through this whole thing. I will give you the link to the whole presentation. You can take a look. But as far as uh, good grounding, I would use SPDs, really high quality SPDs, not just your average run of the mill ones that you get from Home Depot. SPD stands for Surge Protection Device, and you want those on every input to your power system. That means both ends of your solar transmission wire coming from your solar array. You want one in the combiner box there on the solar array, and you want one where that goes into your all-in-one inverter or charge controller, whatever you've got going on, both ends of that wire, because those are often long wires. And the thing that you need to be aware of with an EMP is that the longer the wire is, the more potential it has to pick up current. And so SPD is there. You want a SPD on the AC output from your inverter, because that is tapping into the circuits in your house. And there's a lot of feet of wire running throughout your house that acts as an antenna, and that can backfeed into the AC in port on your inverter. And so I want an SPD there. I want, if you have a generator hooked up, I want an SPD there. Of course, if you have the grid hooked up, that is your biggest vulnerability. And this is one argument in favor of being completely off the grid, is that the grid has thousands of miles of lines, and so it acts as a massive antenna for EMPs. So definitely you want to take extra precautions there. I even have an SPD in my battery combiner, because if you have lithium batteries, the BMS could be damaged by an EMP. And so, whether that EMP is a man-made weapon, or whether it is a naturally occurring one like a solar storm, or even a nearby lightning strike, no, you're probably not going to survive a direct hit. I don't know of much of anything that's going to protect you if you get a direct hit. But what we're trying to protect against is nearby lightning strikes and that kind of thing. So SPDs and really good grounding. Beef up your grounding. Make sure, dig in to grounding. If you want to hear more about that, we could maybe discuss that a little bit more. It's something that I'm still learning about, and honestly, it's being debated in the industry. I don't think anybody really truly fully understands grounding, because there's a variety of opinions on the topic, even in the industry. But one thing that I think is pretty clear is that establishing a really good ground to begin with is going to be beneficial. And so what I would suggest, if you're wanting to prepare for some variety of EMP, is a grounding system that involves 3 ground rods at least 6 feet apart in the form of a triangle, all of them tied together with heavy bare copper wire that's buried in the ground. And those 3 can give you a really good uh, ground to start with. Then, of course, you're going to connect that to your main service panel and go from there. But that's the base from which everything starts. Your SPDs won't do you any good if you don't have a good ground. So that would be some of the kind of preliminary things that I would do that you would want to do anyway, even without an EMP, just because of lightning strikes and things like that. But then beyond that, there's ferrites that you can put on, and I'm sorry I don't have a picture in these slides here of ferrites, but you can do a Google search for ferrites, and they are basically little pieces of I'll just explain what they look like. They look like little pieces of plastic that clamp over wires, and they can help to reduce um, spikes coming into power lines as well. And so you can put those on every wire that's running into your inverter or any of your devices like that. That's another helpful thing that you can do. And so those are a couple of things. Beyond that, though, like I said, there is so little. Most of the testing that was done before the age of the microchip. And so we don't really know. People can surmise, they can come up with all kinds of theories. I've seen people come up with machines to try and simulate an EMP so that they can test their equipment that is supposed to stop an EMP or mitigate an EMP. But how do we know that these simulators are actually taking into account all of the factors that you would experience in a real EMP? I just think there's too many unknowns for anyone to be making the claim that their piece of equipment is EMP proof. And so I don't buy it. There's pieces of equipment out there that say EMP hardened. And yes, I'm sure they've done something to it, but most of the time, uh, I have yet to see any specs released as to exactly how it is that they have hardened that piece of equipment for EMPs. If someone has them, uh, let me know. Like Solarc, they you can pay extra money to get an EMP hardened version. I have searched and searched, and I have yet to find the specs of what is it that they actually do. You're just taking their word for it. And I have my suspicions. I don't know, and I will make that clear. I don't know, and so they're kind of leaving me to surmise because they don't give details. But I wonder, are they just slapping some ferrites on there and putting some heavy duty SPDs inside and calling it good? What does this EMP hardening involve? And are the tests actually accurate? Are they accounting for all these things? We don't know. So here's my bottom line. Do the best you can with really good grounding, with SPDs, put ferrites on if you want. And then, since we don't know a lot, get yourself a cheap backup for any of these pieces of equipment like the inverter. If you have separate components like inverter, charge controller, and these different things, then get a cheap backup for each of those. Or if you have an all-in-one inverter, then get a cheap all-in-one inverter and stick it in a metal trash can. Line that trash can with insulation, put the lid on and put the equipment in there, and put the lid on there and put aluminum tape around the lid, and stick that in your basement if you have one, or in a metal shop or some place like that with as much mass as possible between you and the air. And I think that that is your most surefire way of preparing for an EMP, is to do the best you can with the everyday stuff that's going to help you if it's a low grade EMP. No, those SPDs are not necessarily going to stop a powerful EMP and save your equipment. They might, but probably not. Um, but they're going to help with the stuff that's more likely to happen, like a nearby lightning strike and stuff like that. And then you've got your spare equipment in the trash can if you needed it for whatever reason. The other thing is, if you wanted to get really serious about it, maybe have some spare diodes for your solar panels, because solar panels are pretty tough. I don't expect damage in the cells, but there's a little black plastic box on the back that has some diodes in it that help the solar panel to perform more efficiently, and those could potentially get burned out. But it's totally feasible to replace those diodes if you needed to. They're very cheap parts, and so if you have some of those on hand, that's another option as well. So there you have it. My what is this? My 15-minute take on EMPs and how to prepare for it. Um, I hope that's helpful. Oh, and I guess I didn't have it on the screen. Sorry. This is the kind of trash can I'm talking about. You know what I'm talking about. Just a metal trash can with aluminum tape around the lid. And I think that that's a reasonable option given all the unknowns. Now, if we ever do have a wide-scale EMP in a modern country, then I'm sure we'll learn a lot. And if we come out on the other side of it, then we will have learned a lot of lessons, and I think we'll be a lot more confident about what works and what doesn't. But until then, I think that's the safest. If something is not hooked up to electrical wires, it's probably going to be safe because those wires act as antennas. So anyhow, hope that's helpful. Okay, let's dive into the questions. Um, let's see here. How can I adjust? How can I adjust the 31 to 37 degree sun chart for my location of 27 degrees in Central Florida? Yeah, you are in a outlier location. When I put together those sun charts, was trying to take into account the areas where the majority of the population of the U.S. is, and Florida just kind of stuck way down there out of the picture. So I would just go with the 31 to 37 and realize that the difference between summer and winter is going to be slightly tighter. That's what happens. If one thing that you could do is to download the other two charts that are for more northern latitudes and look at the difference between each one as they get progressively further south. And that can kind of give you an idea if you wanted to make adjustments there. But you know, the with any of these with your shade assessment, it's not going to be precise. We're doing it by hand with a little handheld phone, and there's margin for error. This isn't precise. It's just giving us an estimate. And so if you wanted to just use the 31 to 37, I think you'd probably be close enough to where it's not going to make a major difference. It might have a slight impact on 1 or 2 months, but I doubt it's going to be a major difference. But if you wanted to be really precise, then yeah, take a look at the one before the 37 to 43 and look at the difference between that and the 31 to 37, and that could give you an idea of how to compensate. Because by the time you get down to the equator, the sun is rising and setting at the same time every day. The trajectory of the sun across the sky is a lot more consistent. You don't have the variations between summer and winter and all of that. So it's getting to be less and less variation the further south you go. But yeah, good question. And I wondered if I was going to run into that when I built those, but it was just such a small portion of the U.S. that was below 31 degrees, as I recall. That was the thinking. So thanks for that question. Let's see here. Okay, here's a question from Paul. What do you know about the Honda EU 3000? Well, I think it's a great little option for certain applications. One of the best applications that I can think of for a generator like the EU 3000 would be if you were to get a portable power station, like an EcoFlow or something like that. If you were not going to put in a permanent large station, you were just going to get a small EcoFlow and have that to power a few essentials, charge up your cell phone, maybe power your Starlink. And if you got a large enough one, they do make large ones. If you got a large enough one, maybe even power your fridge and freezer, a few small things like that. It's really hard to get enough solar with those things because by the very nature of them, they're temporary, and it's hard to get up enough of a solar array to charge them effectively unless you're in a desert climate. And so that's where a small generator can come in really handy, because if you aren't making enough solar from the few tiny solar panels that they sell with those, then you can supplement it with the generator, and you can end up where 10 or 20 or 30 gallons of gas would actually last you a good while, because you're just running the generator for maybe a couple of hours to charge your battery pack up and then turn the generator off, and then you run perhaps the rest of the day. That's what I'd like to see, is for you to size. If you go with one of those portable power packs, I think a good sizing is for it to be large enough to power the things that you need to power for at least a whole day. If you could get a big enough one to go 2 days, that's even better. But at least one day, then that means that you're only having to run your generator once a day to charge it up. And I think that's a great application for the EU 3000. Even if you had a really small battery pack, even the EU, the 2200, I believe it is, it's that also is another possible option for that. But with those, they're quite fuel efficient. They're quiet, which is really helpful if you're in town. And then they produce clean power. So if you're trying to power some sensitive electronics, they're not going to damage them because it's inverter generator where it's producing pure sine wave power, and it can run a while on a gallon of gas if you're not running it heavily. So that's my take on a really good application for the EU 3000. And looks like we've got some follow up here. Which EcoFlow should I get? That, like I just mentioned, it for me, it really bases off of your power usage. And so I probably sound like a broken record about this because through this series, we've talked a lot about your power usage, especially in video 4, where we were getting into system design, and everything is the power usage is like the foundation of almost everything that we do. And so with EcoFlow, even, like I said, figure out the things that you need to power, the things that you must have off the grid during an extended blackout. And then I would say if you're going to go that route, get one that's at least large enough to take you for an entire day, if at all possible. So if you come up with 3 kilowatt hours for one day to power your essentials that you must have, then make sure that you get at least a, 3.5 kilowatt hour unit if possible. And then you can charge it up with that Honda EU 3000 or something along those lines. So that's my take. Paul, you're wondering if we got your email last night. I imagine we did. I've got all of the questions that came in here on a list when we get to it, but feel free to go ahead and ask again since you're here, just in case I overlooked it, because we have been getting a lot of emails. Oh, yes, you were the one mentioning about portable power stations. Yeah, Paul wrote me yesterday encouraging me to talk more about the portable power stations. And I agree that they are a great option for some folks. I do feel like the danger that I've seen with them, because I have interacted with numerous people that have been interested in them, and I feel like there's some unrealistic expectations of what they're capable of doing. And you got to realize that you've got to design, quote unquote, design your system with these just like you would with anything else, and make sure that you get a large enough unit. And the other thing is, it's just really hard to get enough solar to be completely independent with one of those. By the very nature of it being a temporary setup. And so that's why I think having a generator to charge one up is a really good idea, because this is not a long-term solution, these portable power packs. They're more of a shorter term thing to get you through a short blackout, or maybe even a week or two, if you had some fuel stashed away. So that's my take. Let's see. And looks like we had a similar question. Advise on your opinion on the EcoFlow power source unit. Yeah, once again, it's funny that you mentioned EcoFlow, because that's the brand that I picked also. I don't think it's the only good brand. I think Jackery and Anchor are also pretty good, but my personal opinion is that EcoFlow kind of edges out the others a little bit. I feel like it's kind of the top of the pack, in my personal opinion. So as far as what size, though, once again, depends on your power usage. And I think it's going to be more the capacity of the battery than it is how many watts the inverter can yield. Because we're talking about, in most scenarios, I think that's the case, because we're talking about scenarios where you're not trying to power big things with a little power pack. You're not going to try and power your HVAC system in your house with a little 2 kilowatt hour EcoFlow. That's just I don't think anybody's going to try to do that. And so by the very nature of the beast, we're talking about smaller appliances that don't take a huge surge of power at one time, like your refrigerator and your freezer. It might take 300 watts is all to run it when it's running, but that adds up over time, and it could be 2.5 kilowatt hours a day. And so that's why I think for most people, your constraining point is going to be the capacity of the battery rather than how many watts the inverter can power at one point in time. So really keep an eye on that. Get yourself a kilowatt meter to check the power usage of your appliances if you want to be more accurate. Or my favorite is this right here. Here's a QR code for you, the Emporia View. This is probably more suited for somebody who's going to put in an actual power system in their home, because this is going to enable you to measure the power usage of each of your circuits in your house and things like that, and the whole house as a whole. And so those are really, really handy for that type of thing. But for a small EcoFlow that's just going to be powering fridge, freezer, some lights, charger, cell phone charger, stuff like that. Yeah, just get yourself a kilowatt meter. And if you go to thereadylife.com/meter, I believe it is. Let me double check here. I want to make sure I'm not sending you on a wild goose chase. thereadylife.com/meter. Yep, that's it. So thereadylife.com/meter, that'll take you to it on Amazon, the kilowatt meter. And that's a good tool to have for one of these small packages like that for measuring your power usage and that sort of thing. Yeah, and Paul says, especially in Washington with all the rain, it's going to be hard to charge one of these with the little portable solar panels that they have with them. Mark is wondering, how often do you run live chat? Well, we've been doing it pretty frequently during this Blackout Proof series. This is a big push that we're making right now to try and really help you guys get something set up before the end of the year. For some folks, they're trying to get it done before the tax credit expires, the solar tax credit. But regardless of whether that's a factor for you, I just think it's a really great thing to have a deadline. It helps us to get things done. And so if we can all, try and make a push to have something set up by the end of the year where we could produce the power that we need to, because this power grid situation is going downhill fast to all appearances. That's what they're telling us. And so if we take what the experts are saying at face value, over the coming several years, we're going to be seeing deterioration with the power grid, longer and more frequent blackouts and things like that. So sorry, that was the long answer to your question. I don't know. Love to hear from you guys. If this is useful, I'm open to perhaps doing these every now and then. In the Ready Life Academy, we do these regularly, only there on Zoom, where we can actually talk back and forth. And we do them at least monthly. Lately, we've been doing them weekly for the past month or two, and I will likely consider that. I will likely be continuing that through the end of the year. We'll see. But we're just trying to help you guys get the ball rolling. And so you let me know what's useful, what's helpful, and we'll see what we can do. Paul says, do you know of any contractors in Washington State that will do these projects for us? Oh, that's a great question. And I'm going to deflect you to tomorrow's video. Or wait a minute. It's all starting to run together for me. And I'm trying to remember if we already released that video or not in Blackout Proof. hang on just a sec here, and I will let you know. In fact, let's just take a look here together, and I will put it up on the screen for you. Okay, here we go. So, true cost of, okay, yep, it's not up yet. That is video 6 coming up. So we've got video 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and video 6 should be coming out tomorrow. And we'll be talking about installation, and I'm going to be giving you a resource of really 3 suggestions that I have for finding a installer. So I think you'll find that really, really helpful, Paul. And I can do a better job on the video than I could do here. So we'll leave it at that. And we'll probably do another live stream before this is all said and done, wrapping up this series. So feel free to hop back on and ask about that if the video doesn't answer your questions. Let's see. Okay, here's a question from Tennessee Mountain Life. Are there any other brands of all-in-one units that you are familiar with or recommend? Smaller 3 to 5K powering small off-grid cabin. Okay, so yes, there are others. Like I said, like I've been saying on the live streams, and I think I said this in the video, I'm not trying to say that Midnight Power is the only good one out there. There's other good ones too. Midnight Power is the one that I personally chose and purchased, and that I like. I like the features in it, the quality of it, and all of that. But yeah, Soul Arc is another popular brand, not without its issues, but it's got a good solid reputation, and there's lots of them out there, very popular, and it's on the spendy side. But they have, well, let's just take a look here. I'm trying to remember their smallest one. I know they had one that was really small and then they discontinued it. So I just want to make sure I'm giving you accurate info here. So the 15, the 18, the 12, the 8. I think the 8 is their smallest now. I believe they used to have either a 5 or 6 in the past, but now their smallest one is the 8K. EG4 is another one that has a decent reputation. I will say I'm a little bit prejudiced about EG4 because they had some trouble with their inverters in the past, and their batteries have been pretty good, but I heard about some issues that they had with inverters in the past, and so I kind of got a little gun shy about them. But all companies have had some issues at some point in time, so I need to cut them some slack. I would say that they are on the lower end of the spectrum. If you're looking at the decent ones, the ones that I'm okay with, the ones that I would be okay putting in my home, they would be kind of on the lower end of that spectrum as far as price and quality, as far as I'm concerned. Now, I know there's probably some EG4 fans here that would shoot me down and say, no, they're the best. It's Ford and Chevy here, but in my opinion, EG4 is kind of on the lower end of acceptable. But I think they make good stuff. And if I was on a tight budget trying to do this on a really, really crazy tight budget and still have something that's decent, then EG4, your money can go a little further with them because their pricing is pretty good. But you got to look at what you're getting, because sometimes these companies will give specs that are a little bit deceiving, and like the continuous power or the surge rating, it won't actually live up to that. And so that's one of the things that I like about the Midnight is they exceed the specs of what they put out from everything that I've seen. So those are a few, but then if you're talking like 3K to 5K, I don't know that they have anything like that. So what I would suggest, I think you're going to have to get out of the all-in-one world if you're going that small and jump into the component world. And so let's see here. Let me, and I'm sorry, I thought I was sharing my screen earlier and I wasn't. So we're going to jump into when I say the component world, I'm talking about where each component is a separate entity, and Victron, as far as I'm concerned, is king in that world. No, they're not cheap. But if you're looking at a smaller inverter, like 3 to 5K, then that I think would be the route that I would personally go. That's a 12 volt. I wouldn't go 12 volts. I would stick with 48 volt. You've just got so many more options. So there's a 3 kilowatt, basically 48 volt. And so, yeah, it's significantly less than one of these great big all-in-ones, but you're still going to have to get a charge controller if you have solar, and perhaps a DC disconnect box and other components like this that are included in a all-in-one inverter. So just be aware of that. But yeah, there's some great options out there, and hope that's helpful. Let's see. Oh, you're welcome, Marka. Happy to help. Off-brand budget inverter quality. Yeah, I don't know. That's a tough one for me. I have learned a lesson in the school of hard knocks over the years that I never regret it when I go quality. Yeah, you know, buy once, cry once, and sometimes you do cry a little bit. But the times that I have regretted purchases almost without fail, it was when I didn't go the quality route. So, especially for something that is so critical to your family's well-being as power, our homes have become so dependent upon electricity for almost everything, and you need reliable equipment for your power. And so, go smaller if you have to. Uh, Wait and save up if you can. If it takes you longer to save up enough, whatever. But be buying. I would not personally be buying my inverter off of Amazon, or maybe I misunderstood. I wonder if you're talking about the backup. Is that what you were talking about? The When I was talking about EMPs getting a cheap backup. If that's the case, let's just go on that assumption. If that's the case, then yeah, by all means, uh, go on Amazon and find yourself a good little cheap inverter that has somewhat similar specs to the one that you have. I've done that. I've been on Amazon, looked for let's see here, 10 kilowatt inverter, and let me just drag that over here on the screen so we can take a gander together. There we go. And so, here's a Sun Gold Power, and that's probably not, that even has a brand name attached to it, that I think I've actually seen one of these. I wasn't overly impressed, but it worked, and so I think it would be a very usable backup, something like that, and at a fraction of the price of a good quality one. I would not want one of these as my primary to rely on, but because there's so much that can go wrong with them. But as a backup, just sitting there in the trash can, I think it's a great option. And that would be like a replacement for our Midnight all-in-one. If you had a smaller inverter, or you didn't mind your backup being a smaller one, then by all means, you could get one that's not an all-in-one if you wanted. But the nice thing about the all-in-one is it's got the solar charge controller built in and the inverter charger, and that makes it really handy for storage, because then you're not dealing with multiple components, and perhaps easier for installation and all of that. So yeah, this isn't necessarily a promotion for Sun Gold Power. This just happened to be what popped up on Amazon. But anyhow, I hope that's getting at what your question was regarding. You are welcome. Sure thing. Let's see. Okay, would you mind? I'm not sure. That would be helpful. Appreciate what you've put together. Let me know what that was in regard to, because I think that must have come in when I was talking about something else, and I've lost track of what that was. Let's see. Came in late. If no one has asked, what's your take on mini split systems? Great question. Yeah, I think that they are a great option for cooling. I think we have better options for heating, but you certainly could use one if you were in a climate where you had enough sun, or some other means, hydro or something like that, to produce power when it's cold outside. But if you're in a more desert location where it can get cold but it's still sunny, then a mini split could be a great option for heat as well. And or I was even thinking, we have a small home, and so we have a little window air conditioner that we put in some summers. We live up north where air conditioning is not it's not nearly as important as it is to you folks in the South. I grew up in Georgia, so I know what it's like. And I hear you. It's a pretty important thing to your comfort down there. Up here, we do pretty well. It cools off every night, but there are some days that it can get over 100 degrees, and it's nice to have an AC. So we use a window AC, but I'm actually considering putting in a mini split, just because I like to get firsthand experience with things rather than talk about the theory. I like to have experience. But also, I was even thinking about, we have a lot of mornings where we're still getting some good sun, but it was clear out the previous night and it got down in the 20s or low 30s. And I'm having to build a flash fire in the wood stove. And it would be really convenient to be able to just flip on the mini split, turn the heater on, and take the chill off the house. And as long as we're getting enough sun, then we're in good shape. So I think even the heater portion can have a place, but certainly the air conditioning portion, I think it plays an important role for folks, especially in the South, for a more energy efficient way to keep your house comfortable. And they still do use a decent amount of power, but the better your house is insulated, the less power it's going to use. So if you have a well insulated house, and then also if you zone them, if you put one in different rooms with its own thermostat or controls, so that you can zone them where maybe one portion of the house nobody's there during the week, maybe they're only in there on the weekends, and you could turn the temperature up during the week. You can save power doing things like this. So yes, you are going to need to build it into your system design, because it's not it's not a meaningless amount of power. It could be as little as a kilowatt hour if if the temperatures were pretty mild and your house is well insulated, then it may not use much at all over the course of a day. But if you're running the thing full blast, if your house isn't very well insulated, or it's just crazy hot outside or something like that, then yeah, it could certainly be 5 or 10 kilowatt hours a day, which is nothing to sneeze at. But don't forget that those are also the times of the year when it's often more sunny and the days are longer, so you're getting more solar power. So that's my take on it. I think they're a great option. EG4 uh, actually make I was talking about EG4 inverters and batteries. Well, they actually make a couple of split systems, mini split systems. Theirs are interesting because you can run them straight off of solar panels if you wanted to. For me, that's kind of meaningless because I want all of the solar power going into my batteries and everything being fed off of the batteries, because then I'm not affected by daylight or cloudiness. My air conditioning or whatever you're doing is not affected by what time it is, how much light is out there. So personally, if I put one up, I would just be using it in AC mode. But if you wanted to, you could do DC mode, and it would be a little bit more efficient because it's going straight DC from the panels to the mini split system rather than having to go through the conversion process. But the EG4s, just be aware, I haven't looked at the specs on their most recent one, but the ones that I looked at in the past, they weren't quite as efficient as some of like the LGs. I believe LG makes some of the more efficient ones. And so just be aware of that. But I have no bone to pick with those, and I think they could be a good option for mini splits. Let's see here. Oh, Karen, you're wondering the theory on how a mini split works. Well, it's basically a heat pump. It's just a different type of heat pump that's not forcing air through ducts. With a HVAC system, a conventional HVAC system, you have a big blower unit and you've got these, ducts running throughout your house and a huge fan forcing the either heated or cooled air throughout the whole house. And you burn quite a bit of power just with that fan, potentially. Um, and not to mention with the electricity to power that HVAC system to actually do the heating or the cooling. With a mini split system, it's the unit that's doing the cooling is actually either the heating or the cooling is actually sitting outside, and then it's running refrigerant in to a air handling unit, and then that's basically a fan that sits on the wall, much smaller uh, than the unit that sits outside. This mounts to the wall and blows air into the room, and that's kind of the long and the short. I know that's not getting super technical, but that's kind of the idea behind it. It's install is a lot easier, and it's some of the units are do-it-yourself friendly, like the EG4, and I think Mr. Cool, I think is, if I'm not mistaken. Basically, that means that the refrigerant lines are pre-charged, so you don't have to have a HVAC guy come out and charge them with refrigerant and all of that. Let's see here. We've got something from Anne. Considering budget constraints and not going into debt, what would be a good system essential to purchase to get a small system going to build on, or use a backup cheap system to start? Okay, that is such an excellent question, Anne. Thank you. Getting a little dry there. Okay, so to a good first step, I think for a lot of folks, and I know I'm the off-grid guy, I'm the one that's trying to help everybody become as independent as possible. So this may sound a little funny, but I think that for a lot of folks, a good first step is a good generator, to be honest. Because with one moderately priced expenditure, you can produce the power to potentially even power your whole home. Whole home standby generators are not fabulously expensive. I mean, you can pick up a Cummins or Kohler. Those are the two brands that I really like. A Cummins or a Kohler 10 to 20 kilowatt generator for anywhere from 4 to 7,000 with a transfer switch even. And I know maybe that's out of your price range, and if so, we can talk about that. But if that was your price range, I think that that's a great first step, because then you're not having to make any changes to anything in your home. If you get one that comes with the automatic transfer switch and have that hooked up, then it can automatically come on within seconds of you losing your grid power everything in your home. And if you have a large propane tank, I would go with propane personally, just because I'm about independence and I don't like the idea of my power being dependent on the natural gas company, and them having taken good preparations. We experienced the coldest cold snap that we've ever had here since we've lived here. Right during that time when it was like 25 below, the natural gas company had some issues, and they were having increased demand from people running their heaters harder, and they were throttling back people. Some people even had lost their gas, was my understanding, right at the time when they needed it most. And that was like, okay, that cinched it for me. I had already been suspicious or skeptical of natural gas, but that kind of sealed it for me. This is not a good independent alternative. You want propane for something like this, where it's sitting there, you've bought it, it's yours. And so if you have a large propane tank, propane doesn't go bad. And to power that generator, I think that's a great first step. If that is too high for your budget, then I think probably your best option is going to be a EcoFlow, like we were talking about earlier, one of those portable power stations, and a small generator to charge it up. And certainly some solar panels that's great. That can help to supplement your generator, but I just think most people aren't going to have enough solar with those portable units to make a to be able to do it 100%. And so I think a small generator with those would be really important. And so, depending on what you're trying to power, if you can get into the old EcoFlow Delta Pro, not the Delta Pro 3, but the old Delta Pro. It's 3.6 kilowatt hours, and you can pick those up for, I think it's like $1,500. And I think that that's about the best deal you can find. It is kind of old technology, so it doesn't have all the latest, greatest whistles and bells, but I think you get the most battery storage capacity for the least amount of money with that. If you need more power than that, then they've got things going on up quite a bit larger. Just make sure, what I would suggest though is it's really easy to get carried away where you keep stepping up and up, and then before long you've got so much money into the EcoFlow that you could have put in a permanent system in your home that would be higher quality, last longer, and do a better job. So if you're using it just as a stepping stone, just don't invest too much money in it, would be my suggestion. So there's a couple of first steps for you that I would suggest. And I hope that's helpful. Smaller budget. Okay, clarification here. When I asked about what essentials you'd recommend purchasing on a smaller budget, I mean, would a charge controller be needed or a number of panels to get by with as a backup while saving to add on? Okay, so if you're talking about a permanent system, so that's another option. You could start out with a generator only, or you could start out with batteries and a inverter, an all-in-one inverter, or a smaller one like one of those Victrons we looked at. And you can add on more batteries in the future. That's an advantage of the lithium iron phosphate batteries, is that they are more friendly to adding on to them at a later date than lead acid batteries were years ago. And so, yes, you could start out with a small system and then add batteries. I would suggest, before you get into solar, I would suggest getting enough battery capacity and a good inverter that you want to end up with. Because what I don't like to see folks do is to spend money on a first step that they're then going to have to throw away. And I know I was just talking about the EcoFlow, and I guess you could say that that's money that you're going to have to throw away if you were to step up to a permanent system, but it still would have some value. You could take it on camping trips or whatever. But if you get a small, cheap inverter, and then later on you want to step up to a better system, you're going to end up, having thrown that money away. So I would rather see you invest in the inverter and the batteries that you want to end up with before you add solar. And you can do the solar later on as a addition, but you could totally start out with batteries, an inverter, and a generator system. I mean, you could start out with just batteries and an inverter and use the grid to charge your batteries. And then that system right there would carry you through short blackouts. You just have to realize that you have no way, the grid is your only way to recharge those batteries. So if the grid doesn't come back on by the time your batteries are dead, then you're going to have another blackout. But that could be a first step, and then add a generator to charge the batteries as a second step, and then add solar as your third step. You can totally do this in steps. But I would just be careful about investing in any significant amount of money in equipment that you're planning on throwing away in the future. If you can, go with the stuff that you want to end up with now, so you're not wasting. Let's see here. Oh, good. Some input on mini splits. Mitsubishi is considered by many to be a great mini split manufacturer, not cheap. As Nick said, only cry once. Yeah. I mentioned LG. They're another well-known one, but yes, I've heard of Mitsubishi. So number of good options, but you look at the SEER rating, SEER rating, and that'll tell you how efficient it is. And you can compare that and with amongst the different units to get an idea for which is the most efficient one. But bear in mind that the biggest factors of all are going to be your climate, how well your house is insulated, and things like zoning, rooms in your house. Do you have multiple units, and do you have thermostats on each one? That kind of thing. Let's see. Uh, Tennessee Mountain Life says, I would say if you buy the smaller inverter first and decide to upgrade, then the small one becomes your backup. And that's certainly a good way of looking at it. So you could do that too. Great point. Thanks. Cool. Well, very good, you guys. Let me see if there was any offline questions that we have time to get to. I don't want to keep you here too long. I wanted to finish by the top of the hour here. So we talked about EMPs. Let's see here. Okay. This one is a little bit involved. I'm trying to think of if we have time to knock this one out or if I should try this on the next one. So it says, this is from Frank. I have a 9.5 kilowatt system that is grid tied with battery backup. The battery is, the battery bank, I think he means, is 8 AGM. That stands for absorbed glass mat. So those are sealed batteries, but they're the older lead acid type. AGM 400 amp hour batteries installed in 2018. I rarely ever use the batteries since blackouts are so rare, so it would have never been used down to even 50%. Should I consider switching to a lithium battery? Does this require replacing the Schneider XW5548 and other charge controller apparatus? The installer told me I may never need a generator and I do not own one. Okay, so we've got multiple things going on here. So he's got 9.5 kilowatts of solar that is grid tied. And then he has these 8 400 amp hour AGM batteries. And they're practically unused almost. They've just been sitting there because blackouts are rare in his area. So he's wondering if he should switch to lithium. So I think it depends on what your goal is for the system. If you're just trying to get through short blackouts and that kind of thing, give you some security through short-term events, and you're not going to be using the system much, if at all, like it sounds like that's the case, I think I'd be inclined to stick with what you have. And I would cycle those batteries every now and then, though, with lead acid batteries, even though they like being fully charged, they also don't like being unused. You want to use them a little bit now and then. So I would turn yourself off the grid for a little bit every now and then and run those things down and then charge them back up. That would be one suggestion. And also that helps you to keep an eye on them, because if you never use the batteries, then how do you know when they've reached the end of their life? But I think I would be inclined, if the way you're using them now is the way you want to continue using them, then just run them until they start giving you trouble. And why put in a new battery bank? But the lithiums are really nice in that they do handle sitting a little bit better than the lead acids do. You can, their self-discharge rate is pretty low, and of course you have sealed batteries, so you're not dealing with the maintenance aspect. But yeah, I don't see a compelling reason in your situation to switch over to lithium. Would you have to change out your inverter if you switch to lithium? No. You would be probably running your batteries in what's called open loop, which means that your Schneider inverter would be charging them based upon their voltage rather than directly communicating with the BMS, the battery management system in the batteries. Closed loop is where you have an inverter that can speak the same language as your batteries. You connect them with a comms cable, looks like an Ethernet cable, and they communicate. And the BMS knows exactly what's going on with the batteries, knows what its state of charge is, and all of these factors. And it's able to communicate that to the inverter so the inverter knows exactly what to do as far as charging them. So it can be more efficient and can be a little better for the batteries. But there are so many open loop systems out there that are working just fine. So there's no reason why you have to do closed loop. So open loop with your Schneider um, would be certainly acceptable to do with lithium batteries. Um, and as far as your installer saying you never need a generator, that could be, it depends on your location and how much solar you have. You've got almost 10 kilowatts. That's a decent amount. And really, the biggest factor is how much power do you use? Because a lot of people, if they had, so I'm guessing that those are probably 6-volt batteries, and so you have 8 of them, so that'd be 48-volt system. I'm guessing probably. So that means 400 amp hours. So there are many homes out there that would 400 amp hours at 48 volts wouldn't be enough to power them through the night. So it depends on some factors like that. But uh, I think a generator is always a good idea to have a backup. But it could be if you're in a desert location and you don't use much power, then that might be totally fine. Oh boy, we've got some more that's come in here. Let's see. What would be a good price point per watt for solar panels? I say anything less than 50 cents a watt is pretty good. It's not at all hard to find 50 cents a watt. I linked to some from Current Connected. I think almost, if not everything that they have is less than 50 cents a watt. And so you can totally get good quality stuff for that. Yes, you can find it cheaper if you find a really good deal or used or get them by the pallet. I've heard of people getting stuff, 30 cents a watt. I've heard of even cheaper than that from a repo or a auction type of thing. But that's, you kind of have to know what you're looking for and get the timing just right. Let's see. Okay. HVAC Direct will provide help you won't get from Amazon. They claim a budget brand. ACIQ is made by the same company that makes Carrier. The company is Media Group, and they make HVAC sold under many names. Okay, cool. Well, very good. Thanks everybody for joining, and I'm going to let you go. Hope you have a great evening. And like I said, tomorrow we plan on releasing video 6. That's going to be about how to decide whether you are capable of installing your own system or whether you need to hire it out. And if you need to hire it out, how to find an installer. I'm going to give you 3 options for finding an installer. And we'll also drill down into the tax credit for those of you that are interested in utilizing that this year and get into some more detail on the nuts and bolts of that and how it works. So keep an eye out for that tomorrow. If you're not on our email list, you can go to thereadylife.com /subscribe, or better still, go to getblackoutproof.com and you'll get access to the resources for this whole series, the resources page for this whole series. It's got all kinds of links and the stuff that we recommend, and just access to our calculator, our system design calculator, and different sheets and tools that we've created to help you along this journey. So be sure and check that out. And like I said, I'm hoping to do maybe one more of these live streams to do with this Blackout Proof series. And so hope to see you then. And y'all have a great evening, and we'll talk to you later.